Allegiance?
Ooh. Invocation by Northridge Baptist. Okay, not here. Roll call?
Sabers.
Here.
Goldammer.
Here.
Yosher. McCardle. Barrington.
Here.
Bathke.
Here.
Sharps. Here. Smith.
Here. Okay, approval of consent agenda items. Items appearing on the consent agenda may be removed by a city council member for discussion at the beginning of the formal agenda items. Anyone want to discuss any of this?
I don't necessarily want to remove anything. I just want to take a second to thank all of the city staff at the Corn Palace, Public Safety, and all of the volunteers that came in to make the Corn Palace Festival successful. I think there was a lot of things that we did really, really well. And so I just want to take a second to celebrate what I thought was a major win for Mitchell and a very successful event. So thank you all for that help and support.
Entertain a motion?
Second.
A motion by Mr. Hurdle and a second by Mr. Sabers. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to speak on the consent agenda? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Roll call.
Oh, sorry. Dang, I wrote it on here twice. Roll call.
You're checking out. You're
Yeah,
making
look, I wrote it
sure
really
we're
big.
awake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yosher. McCardle. Barrington.
I think I'm going to abstain of J. I'm just doing this right.
Bathke. Aye. Sharps. Aye. Smith.
Aye.
Sabers.
Aye.
Goldammer.
Aye.
Okay, citizens input. If you need to address the mayor and members of city council on an item that was not on the agenda, excluding personal items, please come forward to the podium and state your name and your concern. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes. Items will be considered, but no action will be taken at this time. Does anyone wish to address the council? Oh,
I'm Bruce Treble. Most of you know where I live. I've reached out, sent some pictures to some of the members. The ones I couldn't send to, I don't have your phone number. So I sent them out today, and I've heard through Mr. Goldhammer that you're going to do something with Dry Run, cleaning it out. And the mayor responded back to me this morning also saying that they're looking at doing something on Dry Run. Mr. Goldhammer told me a while back on a phone call that you were looking at fall or spring next year. I would suggest do it in the fall because we don't know what winter's going to bring us. And we could get a lot of snow, which would hold things up in the spring. I also know, and you know, that it's going to flood. I mean, there's no doubt about it. What I'm looking at is trying to keep it in that flood, in between the bike path, so it doesn't come up into my backyard. So that is my concern. If you are going to clean it up, I would like to see it done in the fall instead of the spring. Okay, thanks.
thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council? All right, we'll move to the next one. Mayor and council discussion items. So the first thing we're going to do is have Brandon Manchester and staff come up here and talk about a major accomplishment they have done for the city, if you guys haven't heard about it yet.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for giving me some time to come up here and talk to you.
The city has been recognized as a cardiac-ready community. We got the signs, and we got a couple signs that we're going to be hanging up around town. What does that mean? That means the city of Mitchell, over the past years, has been putting a lot of resources into the city to help save lives. There have been countless people saved by somebody doing CPR, using an AED right away before the ambulance can even get there. People are alive today because of those devices. This is a big accomplishment. Mitchell's the first city over 10,000 population that's getting this award or this recognition in the state of South Dakota. This is through the Department of Health and the American Heart Association. We've been working together with the United Way and the Rec Center and the Mitchell Fire Department to get this recognition. I'm going to get the paper I'm passing around, kind of the first few paragraphs talk about what we had to meet, what we have to do to become a cardiac-ready community. The city has purchased over the years 27 AEDs. We have an AED in every public building the city owns. There's actually 3 AEDs in the Corn Palace. You got one north concession stand, one on the stage, and one in the armory. There's 2 in the ice arena. Waste management has an AED. Water department has an AED. Softball diamonds have them. Baseball fields, soccer fields, they're everywhere in town. Businesses are carrying AEDs. There's CPR classes being held the second Thursday of every month down at the fire station. There's a small fee, but it's a CPR recognition, CPR certification course. So we have been working over the past few years to make the city a cardiac-ready community, which is a great thanks to the council and the mayor over the years. I did some research. We have had a fireman teaching CPR in the community since 1974. Harvey Baldwin kind of started it back in the day. He was one of the first EMTs in the state. His EMT number was 45. So he was in the second class ever offering an EMT class. So we have had people in this community teaching forever, which is huge. So when we got this application for a cardiac-ready community, it was actually pretty easy because we already had most of the requirements. We have been doing everything already. And a big thank you to our council and our community because it is a huge investment. An AED is expensive. They are at retail cost $1,700 a piece. And they get replaced every 10 years. And the patches get replaced every 2 to 4 years with the battery. That's not cheap. And so it's awesome that we have the people in our community that are willing to learn CPR and a council that has put AEDs throughout town. Like I said, we got 27, and then we have plans for the future. We are working with the United Way to get AED stickers made with a QR code, and we're going to put them at all the doors, and businesses want them. The businesses that have AEDs, put the stickers on the doors of those businesses, so when they're walking in, people know there's an AED in this facility. If something were to happen, they know the tools are there to help save a life. I can let Ashley talk real quick. She's Ashley Hobbs. She's from the United Way. We've partnered with them. They are actually designing the website, and I'll let Ashley talk about that real quick.
Thanks, Brandon. As you said, Ashley Hobbs from the Mitchell United Way. Yeah, I just basically just wanted to bring awareness to our community on, the good work of our EMTs and fire department and what they're doing to save lives every single day. And so this is an easy way. I mean, a lot of people just do not know where AEDs are located, and we're very fortunate to have them. And so this is just an additional step to make the community aware. And so as many of you know, like my little guy Declan was saved by CPR by his daycare provider. And so the AED is just another step in ensuring that our community is safe and able to act on at any given moment. So I'm very fortunate to work with Brandon and Thomas on this project, and I think it's a great investment in our community. So thank you.
And one thing since I got the floor here, anybody can perform CPR. You do not need to be trained to do CPR. All you have to do is press hard and fast in the center of the chest and call 911 at a minimum. It's awesome that we have companies that let their employees take CPR classes so they're more comfortable when the time happens. Going back to the city, you guys let all your employees take CPR classes. All the city employees are first aid, CPR, and AED trained. We have classes every fall for half the employees, and the next year is the other half, and then the year after that, the first group has to go again because it's a 2-year certification. So they're constantly getting trained in first aid and CPR and AED usage. So if you have a garbage man driving down and you see somebody laying next to his mower on the ground unresponsive, he can stop, get out, and call 911, get that help coming, and hopefully start doing CPR on them and try to save lives. There have been people saved in Mitchell from our AEDs. At the rec center 13 years ago, a guy was working out, went unresponsive. They started CPR, used the AED, shocked them, and he was awake and talking before the ambulance got there, and they were there in less than 2 minutes. And he's still around working out all the time. Same thing at Twin City Fans. We got there in 4 to 5 minutes. He was awake and talking because they had CPR training. They had AEDs at Twin City Fans, and they saved that guy's life. He's still running around town today. Happens all the time. So thank you for everything you have done. Going back to the rec center, Thomas does do programs for prevention, does blood pressure screenings and stuff like that. But we need to focus on CPR going forward in the future, and that's what our plan is, to stay a cardiac-ready community. So thank you guys, and have a good night. Any questions?
I just want to make one comment because we talked about this before, and I didn't realize those AEDs, all you do is turn them on, and then they talk to you and tell you how to run everything. So it sounds like a complicated machine, but it tells you what to do on a 5th grade level.
Yep.
It's perfect for me.
Any questions?
So it's a very cool device that we have everywhere. So if you ever get in the situation, just open the door, turn it on, and it tells you what to do, right?
Yep, super
Okay,
easy.
perfect.
So.
Well, thanks again. Appreciate it, guys. Okay. Does anyone else on the council want to talk about anything? I don't have anything this week before we move on.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
This should have been earlier during public commentary, but I just got a note from Elizabeth Luzak to remind us all that it's the last First Friday, this Friday night. So hopefully everyone will come out to that. One of Mitchell's favorite events on a monthly basis. So be there for a lot of fun. I can't tell you much more about it, but do that.
There will be a dog agility contest that I will be judging. So that's the only thing. So that'll be fun.
I think it's the dog days of summer, right?
Yes,
That's
yep,
the
yep.
theme, so that's always fun.
Also, the first weekend in October, if you'd like to see the mayor ride a bull,
Oh, yes.
buy a ticket to the bull riding event happening at the World's Only Corn Palace, and you can see our very own Mayor Hansen get on the back and ride a bull. He said he's going to go for 12 seconds, but that's just
I just hope I don't die. No, it'll be a fun event. I'm fully committed on making every event as fun as possible. You know, maybe if we hit 15, Marty will jump on one. I'm not sure. Yeah, no. No. Appreciate that. Yes. All right. Anything else anyone wants to talk about before we move on? Alrighty. Board of Adjustment. Entertain a motion for the City Council to recess and sit as the Board of Adjustment.
so moved.
Well, we got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to discuss this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, hearing an action of the application of Dennis Kaus variance permit. Dennis Kaus has applied for a variance permit for a front yard setback of 20 feet versus 25 feet to build a 12-foot by 14-foot covered patio located at 408 West 12th, legally described as shown on the agenda. Mr. Jenigas.
Mr. Mayor and Council, notices were sent out to the neighbors, published in the paper, signs posted. There were 3 letters returned in favor of this. Planning Commission recommended approval 3-1 with 3 absent. He has an existing patio door there and a concrete slab. He'd like to put a roof over top of that and have it an open area, not to be enclosed at this time. Discussion during the planning commission meeting was they didn't foresee vehicles being parked in front of this area. He's got the parking in back for his driveway and such, so they didn't think that the 20-foot would be a hindrance at all for any vehicles in the future, possibly being parked there. It's kind of a different area in the sense that your right-of-way is actually bigger for your boulevard area, so that's why he thought he had more room. It's not it's a 66-foot right-of-way, but the street is narrower, so his boulevard area isn't 12-foot 6, it's a little bit deeper there, so it's kind of deceiving as to why it looks like it should be fitting, but it doesn't. So I can answer any questions that you have.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Goldham, second by Mr. Sabers. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Hearing and action on the application for Josh Frost conditional use permits. Josh Frost has applied for a conditional use permit for outside storage and to operate Mitchell Towing and Recovery business, which falls under the category of automotive sales, repair, parts, detailing, located at 24994 406th Avenue, legally described as shown on the agenda. Mr. Jenigas.
Mr. Mayor and Council, notices were sent out to neighbors, published in the paper, signs posted. There was one letter returned not in favor. It's in your packet. I did ask that Planning Commission do this in 2 motions, and I would ask that you do this as well in 2 different motions, because it's 2 different conditional uses that they are requesting. The first one was a motion to approve outside storage conditional use permit with the condition that there is a review of the conditional use permit at the first meeting in October of 2024, and there is a plan written on paper for the materials on site, the location of where the materials will be placed, fence location and type, and also a schedule for when it will be cleaned up and organized. That passed 4-0 with 3 absent. The second motion was to recommend approval of the automotive sales, repair, parts, and detailing conditional use permit with the condition there is a review of the conditional use permit at the first meeting in October of 2024, and there is a written plan on paper for location of the vehicle placement, fence type and location, business hours, and also a schedule for all the work will be completed. That was 4-0 with 3 absent as well. We had a complaint from a neighbor about this location for the business being operated out there. In the packet, you can see the letter that was sent out to the applicant. He came in a time frame that was allotted on the letter to him for both the business and the outside storage portion of it. Testimonies during Planning Commission, it's 2 different conditional use permits. One's the business, one's outside storage, but there's a lot of discussion jointly between the 2 of them. A lot of them didn't have any issue with a business being put out there. They are on the list for towing. They were approved by the PD for that. They did not realize they needed a conditional use as well in the zoning area that they were at. They actually thought that there was already one on the site, but there is not. The outside storage, they did have a lot of stuff actually on city property, which we noticed when we were going through the whole with the Kiners for cleaning that stuff up to the north. He has pulled all that back onto his property, and now it's all sitting out there. In the packet, you can see the pictures where all the stuff is just kind of out amongst his land, and the neighbors would like that to be cleaned up so it's more organized. Maybe some fencing put up, things like that. I can answer any questions that you have for me. The applicant is here as well if you have any questions for them as well.
Yeah, actually, I have a question. I feel like we're kind of sticking our neck out to approve this in the hopes that the place will be cleaned up. I would rather say clean up the property, let us see pictures of what you've done, and then we'll discuss this next phase. But I feel like we've been burned before in this community where we've, given people timelines and we've given them permission and then nothing happens. And to this day, I'm thinking a very specific location, it's still a mess. And so I guess my my perspective is clean it up, show us what you've done. If I were the neighbors, I'd be upset by this. This would be very upsetting to me. And then we're giving them permission to run a business, which, technically speaking, could bring more to the clutter. So I don't know how anyone else feels about that, but I don't know. Where's Josh? I'm not comfortable having us approve this without seeing that the work's been done. Hi.
Hi, Derek Davis. I am not Josh. I am part owner of Mitchell Towing and Recovery. Josh has already begun cleanup. It is going to keep moving forward. We have a plan on where we're going to have the storage at. Our plan is to not keep cars on property for more than 45, 60 days, just depending on what happens. I've been, with everything that we've already brought in so far, I have within 7 days sent out the notice that I have to send out. And then I have 30 days that we have to hold on to it after that, and then we can resell the vehicle or take it to H&R or whatever.
45 to 60 days is a long time. That's 2 months.
We have to hold on to it for basically at minimum 37 days, I think is what it is.
So how long do you anticipate it's going to take before you have it all organized, cleaned up, so that it's not an eyesore?
The plan is we have till October, to have the plan.
That was the recommendation from them. They have the final say.
So the plan was to have everything in drawing before October or by October meeting or whatever. The plan is we're gonna exceed that. We're gonna have most of it at least cleaned up by that time, plus the plan.
I mean, a drawing is great, but it means nothing to me in terms of what's actually got to happen. I would like to see us, see if I do this right, postpone. Do we want to postpone this until you have the work done? And then come back and show us that it's all cleaned up and that you've made good on what you're telling us, that what's on that piece of paper. Make sure that it's done, and then come back and let's discuss it. But I'm not comfortable approving this on the condition that, sure hope you get it done.
But at the same time, we have a business to run, and I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars already getting this business going. If something like this happens, I would fail.
Yeah, so to summarize, just to make it easy, so to summarize, at the planning and zoning meeting, they had discussed basically all the same stuff. And I went up and said, hey, can you at least give them an opportunity to operate so they can make money and not go out of business and then never clean up the property? So the pickle we're in that we hear a lot is they're in the county and the county doesn't have a nuisance problem. And the neighbor's been complaining about this for a while. And I look at this as an opportunity for us to enforce our nuisance property through the conditional use permit. So if we give them a timeline within 60 days or whatever, the 6 weeks, if they don't get it done, you yank their permit and they're out of business. So that's kind of their carrot at the end of the stick. During that time, they have time to clean it up, make good, make money, and then clean it up. So in my opinion, you guys do whatever you want, but it kind of solves 3 problems. 1, they can still run their business. 2, we make the neighbors happy. And the neighbors did say in the planning and zoning, they would be in favor of this as long as the property gets cleaned up. So the neighbors are happy. And then 3, we can actually use this as an arm to help the county enforce a nuisance property through this conditional use permit. So again, you guys can do whatever you want, but if you do, again, it's a conditional use permit, so they can only use it based on the conditions that you guys set here tonight. So, and I asked the Planning and Zoning Commission to kind of do it this way. Again, you guys have the final say. So if they're allowed to continue to operate the business, clean up the property, and get it done, the permit goes through. If they don't, they get shut down.
Yeah, I mean, I would be agreeable to that. Can you get it done in 6 weeks?
Yeah, I
You can
mean,
get it all
don't have an
cleaned up?
option, don't have an option to.
Right,
other
I know,
than
I
to
mean,
do it
I
because
feel like you need to have
I would go
motivation.
bankrupt.
Yeah, like
Yeah, seriously,
motivation
bankrupt
and a
personally.
deadline to get this done so that there's no question so that we make sure that it happens and then you know what's on the line. I mean, you're,
Yeah. I
Mr.
mean,
Johnson has something to say?
I've worked my tail off to get where I'm at, and I'm not gonna let something like this make me fail, so.
Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, so we've heard a couple different things over the last couple minutes here. Let me talk a little bit about the jurisdictional issue first. So this property is outside of city limits, but it's within our zoning jurisdiction. Outside of our city limits and in the ETJ, we don't enforce our nuisance code. We don't enforce our ordinances generally there, other than for zoning and building permits. So that's really all that we ever do in the ETJ. So this does fall into a little bit of a gray area where we can still regulate it via our zoning code and this conditional use. So really from that perspective, what we're trying to do is make sure that this stays, outside storage, or it stays, what was the other one? Automotive sales and repairs versus becoming a junkyard. That's what we're trying to do from the zoning side of things, because we can't strictly enforce our zoning code in that area. As far as the motion and whether this board chooses to continue it for 6 weeks or approve it with a review in 6 weeks, really they're accomplishing the same objective, whichever one you want to call it. They're giving a short time period for the applicant to go and do some of the work and lay out the additional details as to what they might still be able to do from that point forward. So whether you continue it for 6 weeks or whether you approve it with a review, they kind of accomplish the same purpose. The big thing is, while all of this is pending, typically we're not requiring anybody to discontinue their operations. If you deny the conditional use permit, then we have to require them to stop. So that's what you need to be concerned about.
okay, well, I would definitely be in favor of allowing you to continue working and keep it where you're highly motivated and you have a very distinct window of time that you have to clean up the property. So I'll make that motion that we approve the conditional use permit with the condition that within 6 weeks we have verification, pictorial proof that things have gotten cleaned up and that it's in much better condition than it is now. So that's 6 weeks.
Susan, could we say that it would just be after the next zoning and planning, after the pre-approved date? I don't know what those dates are.
So, and Mark, didn't we talk about having some sort of specifications at this meeting?
Yeah.
So Mark wants some, or not, maybe not Mark, but maybe it was encouraged that we choose some things to attach to the conditional use, so we have something to work for, or is that not right?
Yeah, and that is laid out in what their motion was from Planning Commission. And that's what you could put in your motion as well to
Sure.
have that. And we went with the first meeting in October for Planning Commission, which would actually be October 15th. And we would run it just like it was a new application again. They would have to have these documents at that time and prove that they have already begun to clean up the place. I mean, at Planning Commission, they stated that they've already started putting fencing up, putting gates up along the front side of it. So it kind of looks like H&R Salvage going down Old 16. So it's hidden behind all of that from the roadside, things like that. That's what they would have to be required to prove at Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment at those meetings, prove that they have done that and what you would like them to do.
So you're saying that they're saying they just have to prove that they've started?
Not necessarily.
Okay, because I'd like to say that they've completed, that they've done what we've asked them to do.
Joe Schrader, Public Works Director. If you don't mind, Mark, I'd just like to summarize quickly. So the way I understood their motion the other day was that, so one, they didn't have a plan to review, meaning where the cars are going to go, where they plan to put fences. They didn't have that plan in front of them. So they asked for that plan. And then during that conversation, the applicant said, hey, by the way, to show good faith, we are going to start our cleanup and hopefully be close to done by the time we come back. And Planning Commission said that's great. But I do believe the next step at Planning Commission is, one, to see their plan. Then I'm guessing they're going to extend a time frame of that conditional use to give them adequate time to put their plan into motion that they can approve and make sure it gets done within a certain amount of time, and also put the ultimatum of, hey, you've made great effort on cleaning up your property, but we'd still like to see a little more, or it is adequate, and talk that through at that point.
Yeah. And put a review timeline on that, saying 6 months or a year. It's been done before for Board of Adjustment, that we'll see how it goes for the first year, bring it back again. And Planning Commission is just the recommendation. You guys have the final say with whatever they came up with their recommendation. They just wanted to hear back at their board again to see that plan, to see that they're starting to clean it up, and then give it to you guys again.
I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't going to be like a firm 6 weeks, that it's going to be a little bit longer than that. And I don't want to necessarily have him feel obviously, working on cleaning up the property is something they're working on currently, but just to make sure that we're being clear with the deadlines, that if fences aren't up in 6 weeks, it's not like we're going to immediately turn our backs on business in Mitchell, that we want to be supportive of new enterprise in our community.
Planning Commissions was the first meeting in October for Planning Commission. If you were to follow their same step, I would request that your motion be the second Board of Adjustment meeting in October, because you'll already have one at the first Monday in October is going to be Board of Adjustment, so this would be the second Board of Adjustment meeting.
And I mean, by all means, I'm not trying to squelch your business. I really want to see you succeed. But I also know that unless there's a high level of motivation, that this can be easily put on the back burner, and it just doesn't happen. And we've seen that happen. Unfortunately, we have other circumstances of other people, and their properties never did get cleaned up like we had asked them to do. And so there's this burden that you're probably carrying because we've been burned before. So at least that's how I'm feeling. So I want to make sure that you know that by all means, I want you to be successful, but I want this to be cleaned up as well. And I want this to be something that you have on the forefront of your mind, and something that you're like anxiously engaged in working on to get it ready so that the neighbors in their lovely homes or whatever can look out and not be looking at an eyesore.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we're not really given anything but the option to clean it up, and I guess I know some of you guys up here, and you know how motivated I am, and
He's very motivated to get this done.
I
He
get
has no
myself
choice.
involved in way too much stuff, and this was another thing that.
So who's going to be the sheriff and say, is it going to be you, Mark, or is it going to be
So-
Mr. The nuisance officer?
So I think that the solution would be that we would review this at our second Board of Adjustment meeting, and then also again in a year, or whatever the stipulation we want to put on it, so they would have to come
Correct.
back and demonstrate to us that they were successful in completing it to the standards of this committee, this board.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to say, yeah, and they go out there and it looks beautiful and they put the cars right back when we leave. Who's going to be the sheriff? Because it's in the county.
Right.
And the county doesn't have a nuisance ordinance. So we're trying to enforce the ordinance that ain't there.
And city nuisance officer does not have any jurisdiction out here,
Right.
just make that clear.
Right.
And that's where it comes back to, we basically got to address it through our zoning code and try to, enforce the point where it goes from being one of these things that's allowed into becoming a junkyard. So it's not, I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, but we still have a way to address it.
Can we review it on an annual basis?
I think it's a conditional use permit. It's pretty much, the permit itself is in perpetuity, right? So if there's ever any issues, you kind of, yeah, and then you can just call it, hey, it's
Depending on the
getting
conditions
dirty
that
or
you-
whatever, we put it back on council and we review it at any time, right?
Well, I think everybody's intentions are very good, and I really like the idea of having another look at this in a year, so that it gives the neighbors the ability to come in and say, this is exactly what we've had in mind and it looks awesome. Or it just didn't work out for whatever reason. So at least the first year, I would really like to see us put just have this conditional use as coming due again in another year after it's completed. And we've done that in the past, as Mark brought that up, and it's generally worked very well. And I have all the confidence in the world that you guys are going to do this, but sometimes we need a safety net too.
So with the existing motion, I mean, you'd be bringing it back in 6 weeks, and at that point, when you're hearing it again, you can put whatever additional conditions you want on it.
Yeah, that's at the point in time that I was thinking the year, Justin. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. We have a motion.
We had a motion, I don't believe we had a second.
We don't have a second yet.
I'll second that.
You'll second it. We got a second by Mr. Sabers. We have a motion and a second.
I would request that you make an amendment to your motion. Yes.
Yes.
So,
Emotionally, we had a lot of discussion, so it almost died in my mind.
Okay.
yeah.
I know, I really feel like there were so many things that came up, I didn't think that mine was valid anymore.
Didn't know it, no.
It's no longer valid.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So I would motion that to recommend review of this at the second Board of Adjustment meeting in October with the conditions of outside storage being looked at and conditional uses of the aforementioned designations in the application.
And automotive, are you going to do two separate motions? It is two separate conditional uses.
Yes.
I figured two separate
Okay.
motions.
Perfect.
Yeah. So right now, we're talking about basically outside storage, and then what they did at planning and zoning was saying, we're going to make a motion in a second to basically the exact same rules and just do a second one.
Yep.
So we have a motion by Mr. Goldhammer. Second by Mr. McCardle. Any further discussion? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak further to this? Okay, all those in favor of the first motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now, the second one for the recovery business.
I moved to approve conditionally reviewing the plan at the second Board of Adjustment meeting for the conditional use of automotive sales, repair parts, and detailing conditional use to be reviewed at that time.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Goldhammer.
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrington. Any further discussion? Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this one? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Hearing and action on the application for Central Plains Automation, Inc. variance permit. Central Plains Automation, Inc. has applied for a variance permit for the front yard setback of 1 foot 6 inches versus 35 feet to build a 16-foot by 40-foot office addition located at 1501 West 4th Avenue, legally described as shown on the agenda. Mr. Jenigas.
Mr. Mayor and Council, notices were sent to the neighbors, published in the paper, signs posted. Planning Commission recommended approval of this, 4-0 with 3 absent. There were 2 letters in favor of it, one that had questions about some parking for this area. They'd like to put their addition on the north side of the building. About 20 years ago-ish, they were approved for a variance at 15 feet, but they built it at 17-foot 6. So they built outside of their required variance that they requested. Now they're trying to come to 1 foot 6 from the property line. They'd like to put offices in that area. The offices are contiguous to right where they're requesting to do this addition. Otherwise, they'd have to move equipment if they were put it on the west side or on the south side of the building. And it just wouldn't be office next to office, it'd be through warehouse and things like that. I can answer any questions that you may have. Applicants here as well, if you have any questions for them.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Second by Mr. Barrington. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I want to ask a question as far as snow removal. Where's your door going to be?
Can the applicant come up? Is he here?
I'm Chad Kleitz, owner of Central Plains Automation. Our door will face to the east, where our cement pad is there. We currently have one right there that faces to the north.
Door there?
What's that?
The overhead door there?
Yeah. Yep. There's an overhead door that we've expanded in the last 20 years quite a bit. The original building was where it gets wider there, it's 80 foot. Our original building was 135 by 60, and then we added 120 by 80. We don't use that overhead door. It was one of our unload doors early, and it no longer is. We unload all of our steel and load all of it out of the east, or west end. There's a big overhead door in the west end, is where we load everything out now.
So your door's going to be right here?
Yes, it faces to the east, yep.
Then one other question, have you surveyed the property so we don't have a situation when we get this close, it concerns me that we get a little too far and then it's already happened and then we got to go, oh, we got to forgive them this time.
I don't believe that we have. I think we went off the street, measured, and, that's kind of where it is. So I have not had it surveyed.
So the buildings, you're going to be 18 inches. Are you including any overhang?
We're gonna the roof's gonna come in to our other existing building. I'm not a builder, but it's gonna be like that. It should be just flush with the side. We will have an overhang to the east that overhangs that door. And then I suppose then we'll put the other side will just be like that building is. There's no overhang on it right now.
Okay.
But this will be a wood structure. That's an all steel structure currently.
So just for clarity, you're tearing down the existing, no?
No.
You're adding on?
So our office is inside of the building, wood structure, just right adjacent or right inside there. And I want them to be, we're not a huge business. I have about 10 full-time employees, a couple of part-time VOTEC kids usually. And so we just want we want that office space, because we're small, to be adjacent to each other.
How far from the curb is it?
Our lot line's 12 foot from the curb.
So the addition.
Will you come to the podium, or do we want to wait to make a motion in a second and then have? Okay, motion. All right, so we have further discussion. You can come up.
I was just curious how close to the curb it was gonna be.
You want to state your name and then ask your question?
Nick Blacknett, and then I was just curious how far from the curb the front yard says, right? Front yard setback of 1 foot 6 inches versus 35 feet.
Yep, so the 1 foot 6 inches is coming off that yellow line. So I'm not sure how far the yellow line is to the curb.
Front yard setback is from property line, which is normally 12 foot 6 inches from backside of curb.
Okay.
Not from road, it's from property line is where they're requesting it from.
Thank you.
So from the curb, it'd be roughly 14 feet?
You do
Okay.
your 12 foot 6 plus a foot 6. So you're 14 foot
Yep.
from back of curb. Okay, that's all.
Anyone else in the audience wish to talk on this? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion before I go any further? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Action to set the date for Board of Adjustment hearing 916-24. Alexis Kress has applied for a conditional use permit to operate a family residential daycare located at 423 West 11th Avenue, legally described as shown on the agenda.
Move to set the date?
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Although anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Reconvene as city council. Entertain a motion for the Board of Adjustment to adjourn and the city council to reconvene in regular session. A motion and a second. Anyone in the audience wish to speak to this? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. Number 11, discussion on the cemetery bike path relocation. Is anyone in charge of this? Mr. Schrader.
I can start.
Okay.
Joe Schrader, Public Works Director. So this bike path plan was brought to council last year during budget session. I believe it came about due to the golf course improvements needing to move the trail. And there was internal discussions about moving the trail per the master plan of the cemetery project, wanting to move it in that green location of where it's being proposed. Some of the items that Parks and Cemetery has brought to me of why it's needed, or they would like it to be moved, is future streets that will be in with the cemetery. There'll be less interactions with pedestrians and cars. There also is the storage area or their grounds area in that treat area. They did lose some of their existing space with the new golf course plan, so they'll need to move into a different area in that location, which again, you'll have potential conflicts with equipment and pedestrians, which I do believe they potentially have that issue now. So just trying to alleviate any potential issues. With that, I'll allow Kevin Nelson to add anything if he feels, or else we can answer any questions.
As far as timing and need for development of that space, we have around 460 to 470 graves available. Of those, in Block 1 of Grace 2, there's 365 full graves that accept only a ground level stone. And Aaron explained to me that that's not real popular with people. In fact, he sells 15 to 1 upright stones versus a flat stone. So when you look at how much of a challenge it is to sell those types of graves, it's pretty limited. And here's some notes from him today. A flat section of this cemetery talks about the 15 to 1. Something to keep in mind is these spaces are available are the ones that over the years have been the least desired by people for numerous reasons: steep hillsides, water issues, and so on. So it gets harder and harder to sell these spaces to people for those reasons. Anyway, just some info he thought he'd share. Other ones, we do have some doubles as far as side-by-sides available, and one lot that has 4 in a row. Other than that, they're getting pretty limited. So for families to go out there and buy grave sites, we need to be developing what's going to the west there. There is 3 acres to the north, which is directly across from the amphitheater. That's not shown on this map, but that is another small space as well. So it would be most desirable for us to go with this space. And as Joe had mentioned, I don't know if Stephanie's able to follow along with the cursor, or do I have a motion of the cursor here? So the pointer will get passed to me within about 30 seconds here. Now, if I could just see it. Nope. I am color challenged. So right where she is, right there, the cursor, there's a little pathway that goes through. If he, and he's moving around like a little mouse running back and forth. So there's a cutaway going through the woods, going across that current path that's right now blocked off. That is the desired spot to go in for the materials. So when they take materials off of a gravesite to allow room for the vault and the casket to go in, there is extra fill. In addition to when they take trees off from sites. If you go to the east side of that whole row of trees where the trail presently comes out, that's where the material site had been. But when the tee boxes got extended through there, the materials are now over just to the northwest of the shop in a really ugly location. So the desire is to put those within the trees. And by going over to there, there's already a present opening to go through the trees, and it would get it out of the eye view of people who live in that area and people passing by on the trail. As you would come out there, people have suggested that we can just continue on with the trail along the south side of those trees, taking the angle where Stephanie is motioning with her mouse, and then continue on what is currently shared maintenance/trail. It gets to be quite a trek there of over a quarter mile of shared space of equipment going on there, or bicycles or pedestrians. Yes, it does work right now, but there's a longer distance where we'd be doing that, and it would need to be developed at minimum of 8 feet wide and sturdier probably than a 2-inch base, because it will break up driving tractors on there and other equipment as well. So major concern is safety in terms of moving in that direction. As we go north and look further, I'm not sure how far your map goes. and look where the driving range is, we presently have a trail/cart path. And that comes within feet of people's properties. And Chief, do you have any concerns or any reports to your knowledge of people with thefts or vandalism from yards that are up along that space?
None that I'm aware of.
So people have presented concerns that they're going to have trails in their backyards and that there's going to be open to people being back there, and who knows what's going to happen with mischief. But trails are close to people's yards all over. Here it will be a minimum of 35 to 40 feet along that north-south stretch on the west side. And on the south side, the east-west run would be 50 to 60 feet from the property line. I'm willing to answer any more questions if people have them.
Can you go back to the, yeah, and can you zoom out further so that we can see where that property is in relation to the cemetery? Oh, it's not. I can I was curious to see where this is in proximity to, sorry, I don't know. To see where it is in proximity to the existing cemetery.
In the interim while we're doing this, is it in the absence of a bike path there, how close would a cemetery plot go to the backyard of a current residence there? I don't know if I'm asking that right, but how close can we go to somebody's backyard with a gravesite?
Will you talk about the storm drain there, Joe?
So there is a storm drain line located through there. That's in the red line shown on that map. So we would want probably the edge of graves at least 30 feet away from that storm sewer pipe. Now, not to say that they couldn't put a road over the top of that storm sewer pipe for the potential cemetery expansion if the bike path wasn't placed in that location.
So there is a potential for a perimeter road around cemetery development. You'd of course want one toward the outside, as there is with the rest of the cemetery. There's roads going around the outside rather than needing to walk from a main artery through back hundreds of yards to the other end.
This is also cemetery.
And the community gardens, like, I was just trying to get my bearings, are right in there, yeah, they don't really show up.
I think one thing to answer Tim's question would be important. How far can the graves be? Because I believe on like Kippis Cove, there's a house that kind of sits back in one of those corners. I think it's about 6 feet from their property. So I guess I would rather have the 50-foot buffer strip instead of a grave 6 feet from mine.
But I think it's the storm sewer, because you don't want to be digging around that when there's a storm sewer.
We won't be placing graves on top of the storm sewer either.
Yes. So I went out and visited this, and it's a very weird situation, because it makes sense in both places to me, but there's a lot of ways to look at it either direction. You know, the one thing when we talked about it with city staff was the long-term planning of this, because this is probably going to be the cemetery for the next 100 years. So after speaking with Joe and Kevin, you know, they're like, well, what's going to happen, 10, 20, 50, 100 years from now? I don't have an answer, so hopefully you guys do, but that's like the one thing that they wanted to make sure was taken into consideration. So if you guys don't have anything else to talk about, I'm guessing there's some people in the crowd that would like to come up here and speak, so.
Well, I want to say one thing. I did visit went out there and looked at it with Mr. Willis like a month ago, and he told me, and Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, he told me we're not that far from developing that into the cemetery.
The request to design the expansion is in next year's budget request that you'll be hearing in a few weeks.
Yeah, and so they said if there isn't a bike path, there could be a road there potentially, but I think that's going to have to be designed and then approved, and all that's going to be a later deal. But I think they said, yeah, within 10 years, the other one's going to be out of room. So, I mean, what's the soonest you would ever plan on starting to develop that? Kevin?
3 years.
3 years?
We would have a plan in place next year and could develop it within, we would need to. As I mentioned earlier, the other graves are hard to sell.
So there's going to be a lot of activity there starting 3 years from now. Okay. Anybody else have anything else before we let these citizens come up and speak? All right. Who would like to come to the podium and speak first?
Well, I guess I will. I'm Ron Freeman, and I live at 1420 Pebble Beach Road. And we've been down this path approximately 15 years ago. And there's quite a few people here tonight that live in Kippis Cove, Pebble Beach Road, and Thunderbird Road. And I would just like to ask anybody that's here that feels the same as I do, that plan to come to the meeting tonight so the council can see that you're here. How many of us are here that live in that area that are opposed to the bike path? I think there's
looks like about 10 to 12 people raising their hands for everyone at home that can't see.
And we were talking about, Derek Fahey and I were talking about it tonight. He said that there's 17 homes. I was guessing 20. I personally twice have walked to every home that would potentially be affected by this reroute. And I can tell you, 75 to 80% of the residents oppose having a bike path right behind us. We are not in any way, shape, or form opposed to the cemetery. I think almost all of us did our due diligence, as did I. When I purchased my home over 20 years ago, I went to the city. I talked to Kevin Thurman, who I know and I consider a friend of mine. He assured me that I would need a plot myself before they would ever develop the cemetery, which is no problem. You can bury as many people right behind my house as you absolutely want. Residents of the cemetery don't make noise, they don't walk across our yards, they don't cause problems. They're good neighbors. So I think I'm speaking for most of us, but we are not opposed in any way, shape, or form to the start of the development of the cemetery. We just don't want a bike path behind us. And we found out about this. I found out about this from a good friend of mine who golfs routinely. We were never notified by anyone from the engineer's office, from the park department, from the city in any way that this was going to happen. Yes, I understand that this was something that was discussed in the budget, and I've looked at the map that I obtained off the city website, and all it says is proposed reroute of bike path on the yellow portion. There was no blue line that I could see, and I don't think I'm colorblind, but it never talked about where the path was going to go. So we feel like this decision was made. I don't know who made the decision to reroute the bike path. We just don't want this bike path behind our house. We're not concerned about crime. We've never had any issues that I know of. The chief indicates that there's been no issues that he knows of. We've become accustomed to, and our expectation is that there would be an empty field behind us, but knowing full well that there would be a cemetery someday, and we're okay with that. I feel like, I guess to conclude, because I had some written statements, but I'm not gonna read those anymore. But to conclude, you could call it a pie, you could call it whatever you've got up there. There's only so many square feet contained inside that blue line and yellow line, and you can divide it up however you want. But you're still going to use, I walked it this morning, I walked the whole path, and I have to be completely honest with you, I think it's kind of a shame for some people. I can walk a grass path, but for older people that use it, I think it's been kind of a shame that it's been closed all summer. The majority of it, when it's been mowed, I walked it this morning, I stepped over the rope, walked the whole thing. It's been closed the whole summer for people to utilize for no apparent reason, and you could have done a little detour on the end. I still think you could locate this path at the north end of that field and not consume any more space, and it might even give you some more space to sell cemetery plots, because you can't bury somebody on top of the storm sewer that's there. You can't do that. I would not pave a road over the storm sewer that's there behind our house, because in 2019, it failed in 2 locations, resulting in the flooding of Thunderbird Road and many of the basements of the residents that live here, including mine. So I wouldn't do that either if I were in charge. So you're going to expend a lot of space just to get this path out far enough away to satisfy us, when it would seem much easier to me to just run the path somewhere up along the north, make yourself a maintenance road. Those trees are at least 40 yards wide, if not 50. I think you could find a spot in there to hide your dirt pile and still have enough room for a bike path. I got other thoughts too, but I think that's enough. I'll let somebody else come up and make a statement, so.
You do realize that if the trail's not there and if a perimeter road is, people walk on the road as well. There's a company right across the road where people walk mid-morning, noon, and midday, and they will walk that perimeter, so you still have people walking in that
Yeah.
area, or riding bike.
I think and that was one of the points that I had in my statement that I was going to read, because the folks who own Innovative and Vantage Point, and I applaud them for it, they allow their employees to go out and walk on their breaks every single day. And I see them, some of them I'm friends with, they mainly walk in the cemetery. Not very far of them make it very far down the bike path. So that was the other point that I was going to share. I see those folks walking all the time in the cemetery, and I don't think they're disrupting. Have you had any complaints at all from anybody about the Vantage Point employees or the Innovative System employees that are walking in the cemetery?
Certainly not. They'd have new roads to walk on over that direction.
Well, most of the, and this is observations of 20 years of living out there, most of the activity on the path occurs early morning and in the evening. I don't know of very many funerals that occur before 8 a.m. or after 5 p.m.
So what is it about a bike that bothers you guys so much?
It's not the bike. We just don't want routine traffic behind our houses. We don't want the bike path. I've been up, my wife and I use it all the time. We've walked up farther north of Country Drive. That bike path was installed before the majority of those homes were built, north of Country Drive on Thunderbird. And honestly, I like privacy out in my backyard. I feel bad when I walk by, and I know people that live up there. I feel bad when I walk by, because if they're sitting on their patio, honest to God, you're not much farther than Jeff and I are apart right now. And you walk by and you kind of go, geez, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm intruding on your privacy. But everybody's different. Yeah, absolutely.
Brands, I'm at 2704 Thunderbird Drive. So right now, the temporary path is kind of right behind my property, way in the northwest, just to the west of those right there, the second one down. So now in the morning, I get up, I pull up my shade, look out my kitchen out in the pasture or the field. All of a sudden, I got people staring right back at me in my kitchen. There's no planning ahead of time for me to do anything, to block any view or anything. And I don't know, how far did you say it was, the distance going to be from property?
It's like you're going to be about 18 feet.
Yeah, there's the one spot there that's roughly
Yeah,
18
18
feet.
feet. The paper said 45, 50 feet. I think you said 35. How come it's 18 feet here? That's 6 steps from my property to the path. That's just ridiculous. There's no privacy. I got people looking right in my window now. They're probably thinking, what's that guy doing staring at me? I'm looking out the field.
Why
So I
does it
don't
go
know
to,
what
why
kind of
does it go to
planning
18
went
feet there instead of just go straight?
What?
Is there something in the way there, Joe?
There's a tree with a plaque there. I don't know, I don't know why you can't go around the other way. My preference still would be to do the diagonal. You got tons of trees, piles of trees over by the work thing. Get that crap cleaned up. There's plenty of room for your piles of dirt over there without having to travel all the way over here. It just seems like there's not much planning in here. It's just throw it out there.
That's the kind of garbage we want to shelter. inside of those trees. So as we
Well,
take down
plant some
trees,
trees.
they
You got
don't,
lots of room.
they don't get hauled daily away from there. We
No, I
don't
know.
have a dump truck for the department. We borrow those from the street department. So we collect material, be that dirt, be it dead
Right.
trees and stumps, and it goes to a
Why don't you
collective
do some
pile.
planting, plant some more trees, or even on the north side, you got lots of land there between the golf course, hole, was it 14, and the cemetery. Plant ring of trees around there. You aren't hauling all over the place. You don't have to worry about people.
We actually obtained a grant last year to plant a row of trees all along the trail that I'm talking about.
I know, if I gotta plant something in my yard to block the view, that's gonna take just as long. So. But I guess at least if you do it this way, please push it at least 50 feet from the properties. We
So
bought-
to answer his question, could we go the other way around that other tree?
I'd have to go out there and look at the topography of it, but I don't see why you couldn't swerve it out the other way with removing a few trees.
Jason Gennari, Golf and Cemetery. Yes, we would be able to go around that, into the trees a little bit and around that tree with the plaque. So that wouldn't be a problem.
Thank you. Anyone else? Unless you have a final thought?
Well, just a couple things about people walking through yards. I mean, right now with the path there, we do have kids once in a while coming between our houses. They only have to go over one lot, so, I mean, there still will be, it's not a lot of people, but yeah, they still do cut through there. Just, if you don't believe it, they will.
Thank you.
Chris Rudderath, 2608 Thunderbird Drive. My biggest concern is we haven't done a design of this. 2019, I had water within 24 feet of my house. I'm concerned if you add a bike path that's 2 inches high, 3 inches high, it's going to cause the water to rise more on my side. And I'm going to have water issues. I haven't seen an overall design for that section. I feel like you're kind of getting the horse ahead of the cart, or the cart ahead of the horse here. You know, and putting $200,000 on a bike path when you haven't designed the whole cemetery yet. You know, speaking to other concerns I have of it, I think there has been vandalism along that bike path. There's, as I reported to Kevin Nelson, probably 6 months ago, there's White National stickers. There's been a few other things done along the path, carved in the trees. I mean, stuff's going to happen. If you have it right on your fence, you're going to see stuff. Another concern I have is you're talking about piling wood and sand right by a playground. I don't think that's a really good idea. I mean, if you look, that little square right there is a playground, and that's right where they were talking about piling it. That seems like a bad location as a parent.
South of that row of trees and to the east. Correct.
And every kid that's at the playground's going to be over there. I mean, they're at the pile every night anyway at the other one, but I think it'd be much better to move it away from the playground. That's my thoughts. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to discuss this? Yeah. Oh,
I'm Christopher Hart, 936 Kippis Cove, so I'm kind of in that corner. We've got a hot tub.
sorry, we have some technical difficulties, it sounds like. Sorry about this.
No problem.
We are looking at upgrading the system, so. Yeah. You can go ahead and talk. We'll just.
No problem.
Put a sticker over the beeper.
Sounds good. My concern is mostly for privacy. We've got a deck right on the other side of the trees in that bottom corner. You can't see it on that picture, but, and a hot tub. I could probably high five people on the path riding by. It's pretty close. So that would be my main concern is when you live next to a golf course, you expect some activity. When you live next to a cemetery, you expect not a lot of activity. And so we use the cemetery, we walk in it all the time, and so we know that people are walking around, but the path
But we're hoping for the cemetery funding, for the planning funding.
And I think we were talking with Public Works, and they don't have a design because it hasn't gone out for bids yet because we were waiting for this meeting.
We do have a design complete, not to say we can't make revisions.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right, that's it. All right. Any final thoughts on the discussion of the bike path? And hopefully the beeping will end soon. Oh, we got one more.
Christopher Hart again. If there are concerns about kids in the dirt pile, I mean, they do, even when it was further east, kids do crawl all over that thing. I mean, I would if I was a kid, but, so if that is a concern, that just
Me
might
too.
be something to keep in mind, so.
All right, thank you.
So when it comes by Dr. Hart's house, I guess she's sitting over there, she can't tell us. I was just curious how close it was to your property. If you're giving people high fives, I mean, they got 50-foot arms? Because we're talking that most of that, except for that one little sliver up top, is 50 foot or around 45 feet.
Where the trees are, I'm not sure where the path is. I didn't quite catch that, but I mean, I was being a little facetious when I said give it.
He's got long arms.
But we're basically butted right up to the trees at the property line, so.
Mr. Mayor, I was just going to throw something out as a possibility. I know we've got it designed and we're looking at trying to move forward with a bid. And I don't know if this is, hopefully we can consider this, but I would like to have an option B as opposed to what was considered right now of going straight south and then straight to the east. But some of the comments I've been hearing, and of course that's in my ward, they miss walking through the trees. Now that doesn't mean that you can't plant trees, we all know that, but they love the existing part that's right now, and I know that we're looking at maybe having the dirt piles there, and you know, where the existing trees, where they piled them up now, obviously there is some space there, and we have some extra space, but you know, we're not going to build the cemetery, I don't think, real close to the new 15 tee box, but I don't know that for a fact. But I think if maybe we just take a step